At the turn of the millennium, an entire franchise was born by betting all its chips on authentic street culture, the smell of burning rubber, and the glow of neon lights. The Fast and the Furious didn't start out as a generic international espionage saga or a team of invincible superheroes. It began as a fascinating, voyeuristic, and dangerous window into a completely underground world. Today, we are going to dissect the genius behind the first 10 minutes of the classic films in this saga. We'll understand the psychology of the aesthetic promise, analyze the legendary first race between Brian and Toretto, feel the social impact of the skyline arriving in Miami, and experience the violent reality check in Tokyo Drift. And finally, we'll understand the exact moment and the reason why the franchise lost its true essence so tragically. Fasten your seatbelts, because the race is about to start. Chapter 1. The Psychology of the Aesthetic. Promise: to understand the weight of a perfect opening, you need to understand the psychology of the aesthetic promise. The first few minutes of a movie act as a silent contract with the viewer. Before introducing any villains or deep drama, the opening has only one mission: to inject the pure vibe of that universe straight into your veins. The genius of the first Fast and Furious is exactly how it hands you a VIP pass to a restricted, illegal world. The average viewer, who wakes up early and lives a normal routine, is suddenly sucked into a fascinating underworld. The screen throws clandestine late nights, heavy hip-hop, the glare of green neon, and the smell of burnt tires right in our faces. We love this opening because it gives us a taste of a seductive rebellion that most of us will never experience in real life. The movie's promise is clear. For the next 2 hours, you're not just a spectator, you are part of this tribe. Chapter 2. Rewinding to the beginning of The Fast and the Furious. If we want to be surgically precise with the stopwatch, the original 2001 film actually starts with the silent hijacking by the black Honda Civics on the highway. But this is where a fascinating collective psychological phenomenon comes in. When we close our eyes today and try to remember the beginning of The Fast and the Furious, our minds completely ignore the stolen truck and jump straight to an isolated, crowded street in the middle of the night. In our emotional memory, the entire movie truly begins the exact moment Brian pulls his green Eclipse up next to Dominic Toretto's red Mazda RX-7. This legendary first race between the two doesn't actually happen in the first 10 minutes. It occurs a bit later in the narrative. But its cultural impact was so devastating, so raw, and so perfect that it simply swallowed the real beginning of the movie. In the minds of the fans, this is where the saga begins. It acts as the baptism by fire for the protagonist and the franchise itself. It's on this starting line that our contract of loyalty to that underworld is permanently signed. The screen overflows with street culture. We see the euphoric crowd parting like the Red Sea, the smell of burning rubber almost piercing through the screen, the popped hoods, and the smoke taking over. The genius of this race isn't just the speed or the danger to manifold warning flashing when Brian hits the nitrous too early. The magic is in what it establishes for the rest of the story. Brian loses the race, nearly blows his engine, and shreds the floorboards of his car, but he walks away smiling because, in his mind, he almost beat the untouchable king of the streets. And Toretto's cold response echoes through pop culture to this day, making it clear that it doesn't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning's winning. This shared memory proves one fundamental thing. The soul of the first movie was never about stealing DVD players. It was about absolute respect earned on the asphalt and the instant chemistry between two worlds colliding for the first time under those streetlights. Chapter 3. The Peak of Tuner Culture in Miami. Fast forward to 2003 and Second Fast 2. Furious pushes that same urban aesthetic to its absolute limit, delivering the true, unforgettable peak of tuner culture in cinematic history. The opening scene tearing through the neon-lit streets of Miami is a cathartic explosion of colors, loud music, and pure style. And at the epicenter of it all is possibly the best and most iconic vehicular introduction ever made: the overwhelming arrival of the silver and blue Nissan Skyline GTR R34. The street race, organized by Tej Parker, featuring the drawbridge jump and cars taking off like rockets, is pure teenage desire materialized on screen. It is the ultimate rebel fantasy. Vibrant lights, screaming engines, adrenaline, and a subversion of the rules that, at that point in the narrative, didn't carry massive, global, or deadly consequences. But far beyond the purely visual spectacle, this scene firmly establishes the rules of social status within that ecosystem. When Brian arrives at the night meet, He is a complete outsider, a man with zero respect in the local scene. Nobody there cares about his backstory. But as soon as he lines up that skyline at the starting line, the aggressive roar of that engine and his crushing victory on the asphalt instantly buy his status. The car acts as currency and power. In the tuner world, you aren't worth a dime based on the clothes you wear. You are judged exclusively by the monstrous machine you built and your unwavering courage to floor the gas pedal. Chapter 4: Tokyo Drift and the Real Chaos of Destruction. Shifting the story's axis in 2006, the saga decides to completely change the scenery and gives us Tokyo Drift. And the first 10 minutes of this film take an incredibly raw, dangerous, and aggressive direction. The opening scene doesn't start with hyper-professional criminals stealing electronics, nor with experienced street racers betting hard cash. It starts at a quiet high school, in broad daylight, driven entirely by ego and teenage rivalry. The race that tears through the housing development under construction is the most brutal reality check in the entire car franchise. It's a brilliant and sad clash of social classes settled on four wheels. On one side of the line, we have the insufferable rich kid driving a wildly expensive red Dodge Viper his millionaire daddy bought him. On the other side of the coin, we have Sean Boswell, the problem child, the broke working-class outsider, driving an old, beat-up Chevy Monte Carlo, pieced together by hand with junkyard parts. The true genius of this race isn't the contest itself, but its consequence. Unlike the professional controlled runs of the first films, the opening dispute of Tokyo Drift ends in pure structural barbarism and total destruction. Sean's Monte Carlo rolls over with absurd violence and is completely totaled. The model home is reduced to dust and debris. This bold opening isn't about the glory of beating your enemies. It's about absolute loss. It is the destructive catalyst that isolates the protagonist for good and forces his dramatic exile to Japan, ripping him out of his American comfort zone and throwing him into the hostile underworld of the Yakuza and drifting. Chapter 5: The Sad Contrast and the Death of Identity. But it is completely unavoidable to look back at all these spectacular cinematic beginnings and not feel a deep bitterness when we compare them to the current generic state of the franchise. There is a very clear reason why old-school fans abandon the saga and feel in their hearts that the magic simply disappeared. The early movies delivered intimate, highly dangerous, and deeply tangible beginnings for the audience. They featured realistic urban street races, midnight cargo hijacks, and visceral rivalries. The danger was real, because a high-speed car crash meant immediate death or life in prison, not a CGI explosion where the character walks away unharmed, just dusting off their jacket. The culture of the asphalt, the heavy smell of gasoline, and the passion for mechanics were the irreplaceable soul of the script. Unfortunately, the franchise underwent a bizarre mutation over the years. That magnetic, seductive fascination of the first 10 minutes evaporated. Street culture was mercilessly erased and replaced by global government espionage missions, nuclear submarines sliding on ice, and armored cars literally flying into outer space. The rebellious, rule-breaking drivers transformed in the blink of an eye into bulletproof comic book superheroes. And by forcing this absurd transition into the megalomania of explosions, Fast and Furious lost its greatest asset, its identity. The raw essence, the gritty texture of the streets, and the authentic connection the audience had with the cars were sacrificed at the altar of easy box office money. They stopped being passionate drivers from small garages and became immortal gods of Hollywood's most generic action genre. Conclusion: the legacy of the asphalt. Despite all the absurd and questionable paths the saga chose to take in its latest, exaggerated sequels, the undeniable legacy of the original films remains completely intact in the history of global action cinema. The first 10 minutes of those early productions remain a flawless masterclass in wordless visual storytelling, world-building, and true automotive passion. They serve to remind us of a wonderful era when popcorn cinema didn't need billion-dollar CGI budgets or imminent global threats to keep us glued to our theater seats without blinking. Sometimes, absolutely all you needed to make history was a dark street, some green neon lights, a girl dropping her arms at the starting line, and the wonderful symphony of an engine hitting its absolute limit. And now I want to hear your voice and your opinion in the comments. What is the best and most memorable opening scene of the entire Fast and Furious franchise in your honest opinion? Is it the first race between Brian and Toretto, the triumphant arrival of the silver skyline on the streets of Miami, or the chaotic opening race in Tokyo Drift? Leave your honest answer down below. If you also miss the true street culture portrayed in cinema, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming deep dives. I'll see you at the next red light. Catch you later.